Our missional churches and leadership. I am going to be talking about how my wife and I implemented discipling and mentorship in our ministry and how it has kind of evolved and struggled over the years and where we are left questioning what to do. My wife and I came to the University of Utah in Salt Lake City in 2019, and we inherited six students. We had Nicole and Anthony and all these people, and this is just a select group of them, but we really didn't have a lot to go off of. So we would meet with various students for about an hour, hour and a half once a week over coffee, or we'd go on a walk, or we'd go out and evangelize or read a section from the Bible. And it was really, really fun to do that. It was really fun to mentor these students, to get to know them, and we grew really close bonds with all of them. And our ministry grew, leading us to have this leadership team on the left here of, I don't know, 10 or 15 students, them leading Bible studies, them having people to lead Bible studies with. And we would meet with groups of these students, about five each. And we would really only meet with leaders, those who were leading the Bible studies. And as we entered into a COVID year, where the University of Utah could still meet on campus, we noticed that a lot of freshmen we're wanting greater leadership and greater intimacy. So you can see on the right side here, this was our first apprentice team, another mode of leadership. And we would meet with some of these students throughout the year in groups of three or four or five, those that we really thought were coming up through the ranks, were getting more involved, were dedicating time to university, but also had some emotional maturity here. And these groups really did work. And the groups of leaders we were discipling would begin to disciple younger students in the hopes that it would kind of perpetuate and build. Well, on our left is our second year leadership team, all small group leaders. And I think it was about 15 to 20 leaders at this point. But now, after 5 or 6 years of doing this, we have an even larger leadership team of about 60 to 70 students. We obviously can't meet with all of them, and that has been challenging and has caused some disruptions in our ministry, where students have even made comments of, if I'm not being discipled, I'm not valuable. You obviously don't see me as valuable. And some students have even disbanded from the ministry because they were not being discipled by Kelly and I, and they weren't seen as valuable or as important. It's caused some real harm and caused some real hurt to Kelly and I as ministry leaders. We can only meet with so many people, and we want mentorship and discipleship to be a good thing. Do we meet in groups? Do we meet one on one? What are we doing here? The greatest framework I can imagine this through is the three evolving stages. It was in one of the first videos we watched at the beginning of the class. At the beginning of our ministry, we were an emergent, exciting organization with six people growing, with lots of small groups and discipleship happening. We had to start meeting in discipleship groups instead of one on one, and this really did well. It grew, and we had a performative organization where we would meet with people. Those people that we met with would meet with people, and in the hopes that it would continue to go and go and go. But as people found their worth and value in making disciples and their worth and value of who was discipling them versus who wasn't discipling them. Was it more valuable for Kelly and I to disciple them? We really started to see this regulative agency turn into a crisis. There's confusion. And like I said before, 6 to 8 students disbanded from our ministry and left with a really awful taste in their mouth, saying that Kelly and I had favoritism, that the leadership team had favoritism, leading us to a new imaginative state where we did not disciple, we did not mentor. We would send them in groups and they would talk to one another. But then we felt a pretty big gap of intimacy and closeness and connection from key leaders that we really did need to mentor and disciple as they moved up through the ranks of university and maybe even wanted to be missionaries. And we all so felt like we were missing out on our own ministry because we love meeting with people one on one and we love developing leaders. This has caused us to look at parts of scripture and evaluate, is what we're doing biblical? One of the key verses we've studied in Second Timothy is Paul's call to entrust to faithful people who will be able to teach others as well. Paul is obviously telling Timothy to be selective in his leadership process, to trust those who can teach others, to pass on the good gift of the gospel. Don't trust people that will cause disunity. Trust people that have showed up, been faithful and available. But contrasting this to another claim of Romans 2:11 that God shows no partiality, and nor should we. Even though we're bound to do so as humans, to pick people we like, we shouldn't be partial. We should be equitable, at least in our culture and imagination. But one of the driving verses in our ministry has been Mark 3:13, where Jesus at the beginning of the ministry goes up to the mountain and calls to him those whom he wanted, or those whom he desired, as it says in other translations. This has always felt like an interesting thing, that we can mentor and disciple those we want. But how does that desire to mentor and disciple those who we want conflict when we only pick people who look like us, sound like us, talk like us, and we don't pick those that are different than us or of a different ethnicity or culture than us? Jesus picked 12 Jewish men, but we actually have desires to pick people that are of a different background and even gender than us. But can that be based off of our desires? Or do we need to seek other means? Kelly and I come from a background of a church that was called a disciple making church, if that's really even a thing. And they had this diagram on the left here called the Pursue God method, where one would start by trusting in Jesus, justification, and living to honor God, sanctification. But really, the ultimate uh, thermostat of this, is that we matured by helping others. That would not so much act like a thermostat, but it would be a thing that measures temperature. It would be a thermometer of, if you are making disciples, if you are mentoring others, then you must be doing well in honoring God, and you must be doing well in trusting in Jesus. I distinctly remember my pastor saying that he was mentoring 20 people at a time. I really thought he was a successful pastor. And then we also have our boss's paradigm to us of fattle, picking people who are fattle, or fat disciples, if anyone has ever heard of that. Picking people that are faithful. They continue to show up to multiple events, obviously showing that they are bought into the organization. Picking people that are available, that have time on their hands to meet with you, to dedicate time to discipleship, which does take time and personal energy. Also, picking people that are teachable or humble, that they actually want to grow and they might see us as teachers. Picking people that are emotionally healthy because we don't just want to counsel. And picking people that are leaders who have influence over others. These have been the paradigms that we have grown up with in our Christian walk and journey. We're just wondering if this has created values in our own leading where we are only valuable if we make disciples, or the disciples we have to make are valuable based upon if they're faithful, available, teachable, and on and on. We're questioning our limits and how we can make discipleship groups or one-on-one disciples that are intimate and close, because we love that, and wondering if that's what God is calling us to do. One experiment I want to try is following Wim's inspiration to have storytelling mentorship, to Have students talk about what has been valuable to them in mentoring and discipling relationships. One idea I have is giving an exit survey to those leaving leadership because they're graduating or just can't dedicate time to it, and asking them their favorite story of being mentored in college by me or Kelly or a leader to see what students are desiring. Also, had to have Kelly and I reflect on maybe the intimate moments that we thought were intimate weren't so intimate with them, and to see how students have grown in their discipleship, to see if this is what students are still seeking or needing. Another idea we have is students getting in these communities and sharing stories, but also mapping onto biblical modes of discipleship, like she instructs. But some questions I'm still asking is, who do leaders mentor? Do we mentor our staff team? Do we mentor like the Peter, Johns, and Jane of those closest to us? Or can we mentor everyone? We really want to evaluate our levels of action and the values we put in them. Second thing is, what values are laid in mentoring in our ministry? And part of that will be the storytelling of, did students feel like they were only valued if they were being met with outside of our worship night and our small groups and our leadership meetings? Did students only feel seen when they were actually met with one-on-one or in a group setting? These are the questions we're asking. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. Here are my resources here with Wimberly Smith and our quoted Alpine Church. Thanks so much for watching this presentation. And thank you so much for having me be a part of this class, Missional Churches and Leadership.